This is one I didn't really want to get into, but I don't, because it's this one might take a long time. But it's like because you guys had the conversation about Twist and Elige, which was really interesting about the criteria for what makes the GOAT. And for IGLs, I feel for me like accomplishments matter a lot more than for other roles, because it's hard to obviously say how good they are based on their stats, besides their results. So when it comes to Gla1ve and karrigan, if karrigan does win the second major, like for me, I'm still leaning towards Gla1ve because there's a few arguments. And this is like a big conversation, even though karrigan has lots of good ones. Okay, well, I'll ask you this, Thorin, because I know that you're leaning towards karrigan. If he wins, is there any shadow of a doubt that he's the GOAT, or do you already feel like that right now?
Oh, here's the thing. I don't think it's actually open and shut. Like, I already thought you could have made like a convoluted argument before you win a major, but you'd be more going on other factors. Here's what you would say, especially if he won this major, by the way. If he wins 2 majors, well, spoiler, no one else in history ever won with an international team. Obviously, we don't count like people who all speak Russian as international teams. Sorry, we don't. So, bearing in mind, no one ever did it once. If he's done it fucking twice, and at the end of the game, when everyone claims they all learned the game and all the level was high in the parity, like, at that point, he has his own argument, doesn't he? Like, Gla1ve has an amazing 1-4 with, like, Danish team. karrigan has one. And also, the other thing for karrigan for me is this. Gla1ve realistically did it with 1 core and 1 player change. karrigan, unironically, has 1 player connection. Obviously, he had Rain in 2 of his phase teams. Aside from, and Rop's in his mouse in his phase ones now. Aside from those 2 player connections, he'll have done it with like 4 distinct teams or something. That's ridiculous. Like, as in being at the championship level, he didn't win the majors, but just to be at that level. Because remember, there's another thing as IGL is like, at the end, it's the same way as I describe IGL in a round, right? In a round, if I get like the openers of the openers I planned, you do the call that I called, you throw the utility, you get onto the site, and then you lose a 2v2. I did my job as the IGL. You're the ones with the crosshair, the guns. Like, I can't. So I think it's the same with tournaments. If you can just get your team to that championship status, that's something too. Because all I'll say is this, I'll spin it the other way. If it's so easy to take a lineup like Mouse, by the way, I'll say this right now. I think some of the lineups Gla1ve's had that he didn't win with were better than the fucking Mouse lineup. karrigan this is why you can't beat fans. karrigan took a Mouse lineup that nobody thought could be one of the best in the world, right? If people don't know, Frozen was like 16 years old. Rops wasn't even Rops as he is now, and Woxic was nobody. He was a hero on 1 map every now and then for Hellraisers. That's it. And one of the most hard-headed players ever. And then Chris J was supposed to essentially be retired at that point. He took that team to top 2 in the world. Like, mate, let me know when Gla1ve wants to fuck around, go international, get essentially what are a bunch of tier 2 players or low tier 1, and then go to top 2 in the world, mate. I'll sit back and wait. You can have all day long if you want. That's a pretty good accomplishment in a different way, if you get what I mean. It's not the same as winning a tournament with the best players,
Yeah, I might have some excuse for Gla1ve in the sense of like, as soon as someone wins too much, then they start like just.
That is the shittest angle of all time.
It doesn't. All of our favorite players. And
it doesn't. Like, shall I tell you what happens to people you overrate?
Well, karrigan took so long to win the major, right? And then since then is obviously he's not had the era.
Here's the thing. I've heard this argument before, Lord, is it goes like this. It goes like this, right? Well, because Gla1ve and Cold Zero won too much too soon, it sort of sated their appetite to win, so they sort of chilled. But karrigan, because he didn't win and Device didn't win early, what happened was they just kept trying to win, and it meant after like 7 or 8 years they won. So that means they're actually not as good because they were much better for a long time and won the same amount at the end, but they then didn't give... What? Like, you've actually inverted the hierarchy of values that I use. My hierarchy of values goes like this. If you win loads at the beginning and then fuck all afterwards, you obviously weren't a true champion, were you? A true champion's motivated internally, not externally. He wants to win because it's like simple. I think the guy's a dickhead, but I guarantee he wakes up every day and is like, I should win the game. Of course I'm the best. I've worked to be the best. I'm going to work to be the best tomorrow. Yeah. Is he better than me now? No, he isn't. I'm going to win. Like, guys like that don't get sated. If you get sated, spoiler, you weren't like a true champion to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but okay, well, there's something we said though about like you have like a goal. Like, even if you're a true champion, ultra competitive, and you're the most ambitious possible, you have an ultimate goal of like, I want to be the best of all time. Yeah. And then, like,
probably shouldn't stop after 2 then, should you? Probably should. Well, I want to be the greatest of all time. Or 2 rings, actually. Never mind.
Well, like, let's say Gla1ve stopped at 4. Whatever, he stopped at.
He stopped forever, mate. Forget fucking stopped. He just stopped forever. You put him in the grave already. He's gone. He's over. He's done.
But like, karrigan got 1. karrigan got 1.
Yeah.
So it's just
if he gets 2. Two's not
if
bad.
he gets two, yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
then, then I would be like, then all the other arguments would open up even or blossom even more for me of like all these different rosters.
Yeah.
But here's my argument against karrigan winning all these rosters. Gla1ve, got his 4 rings with a team that he made work. And I think that he was also the specific answer to karrigan on this roster. So when he came in and then had the team win, he solved their biggest problem, which was not the quality of calling. Obviously, karrigan was a great caller. It was a choking issue. And so Gla1ve came in, solved the choking issue. The famous Atlanta final comeback on Train versus Virtus Pro showed how brave he was, to make comeback calls like that. And then from there, because he was the direct answer to karrigan, made the team work. Why would he make a roster move if his team won under his leadership? Why would they ever change anybody is the question.
Here's the problem. You were doing so well until you fucked up and asked that rhetorical question. Because here's the point, Launders. Are you ready? If it was up to Gla1ve, there wouldn't ever have been an all-time great Astralis. Gla1ve, like all the other members of Astralis, wanted Kirby to sign, and that would have been the lineup for 2018. They never wanted, and not only that, after Kirby, then they wanted Config. Their third choice was Magisk. And the only reason they didn't get Kirby is because Kirby, on the day of the contract, signed with North. And then Config literally had the argument with me and told Zonic, I don't want to do media. Like, if essentially the best GMs in fucking Danish history are Kirby and Config. So,
but maybe we find out that at that point Config could have been the player that you wrote that article about Config that like he never realized his potential, and I actually think that under Gla1ve under that Astralis he would have. I think
we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know, but I think that's because they did really well with Magisk, and so they didn't need to try to.
Because here's the problem, Launders. I get the vibe that people do want to do this bullshit where it's like all of karrigan's career counts. He's a failure when he didn't win. When Gla1ve objectively can't even make majors and is shitting the bed with, by the way, I'll tell you right now, I actually think Gla1ve is entering Nafani territory. You have 2 of the best players in the world on your team. I don't care what anyone thinks. They're 2 top 20 players right now. blameF and Device. Every game can be relied upon to play at a top 20 level. You can't even get into, mate. You can't even win fucking online tournaments, mate. Like, that's whack as fuck. Because here's the problem. People want it to sound like it's still 2 months after the great Astralis and that Gla1ve had his child yesterday. That's what everyone's been pretending for 2 years now. You've all been pretending, but he became a father years ago! Electronic won everything with his child in the meantime. Like, what are we doing here? And also, by the way, I'll just throw this in there. That is the shittest sports take of all time. You know why it's the shittest sports take? Because almost every actual real athlete won after having children. This is the dumbest take of all time, guys. We aren't even playing physical sports as a video game. But the fact that, essentially, the fact one of your sperms made it into an egg and then isn't in the room means you can't win in video games now. I don't know about that, homie. I don't know. That one's really out there for me. You know what I mean? Like, I can accept a lot of takes, but that one's too far. Just because your gamete's got out in the world doesn't make you not able to call a fucking T-side of Inferno Gla1ve. That doesn't work, mate. And also, spoiler, here's the other thing I'll just throw in there. I'll tell you what, this one will hurt your feelings, Launders. Okay. No one's ever been overpaid to be a more overrated IGL in the history of Counter-Strike than Gla1ve. Oh, that hurts.
Right now, yeah, that's actually the reason I think he's still playing, is because I think like he's been offered some unbelievable salary, even though honestly it feels like he probably would have stopped some time ago.
Maybe. That's the other thing I also do. By the way, I also do think if we were at the old days of like where you made like 1,000 a month, he probably would have retired after the
and so how do you reconcile that, Duncan? Because it's like
I don't need to. I just look at reality. It happened. What happened, and I don't worry about fantasies.
Well, but if we just consider like a period of time where he's the best, and you don't consider the time.
By the way, I actually do consider Gla1ve the greatest. Like I haven't decided myself. What I think is it just each win makes it more interesting, though. It's getting more spicier. That's why for me, that's also why I would like this major.
Okay, so it's that close then for you?
I think it's a 1A, 1B. You could pick.
Cool.
I don't mind it on that one,
Yeah, because I'm like deciding what happens based on like how deep these teams go in the playoffs. Like what happens with FaZe.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.